We've heard that the NBA trade market may have been frozen for Giannis Antetokounmpo, but now there are rumors that the Milwaukee Bucks have finally come to the realization that it's time to move Giannis and may even plan to do so at the 2026 NBA draft. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics locking in on their trade targets and other NBA trade buzz around the league. We're getting into all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And the guy that keeps getting talked about is Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Everything's being talked about Giannis. You've heard Windhorst say things in regards to the trade market holding up because of Giannis, all this type of stuff. Well, we have an update from a league source that says this. This is shaping up to be a draft day kind of thing. Another source said simply, it's happening. So it seems like, the rumors that we've heard that the Milwaukee Bucks were looking to add to the team, be buyers of the trade deadline, that over the last little stretch that the Milwaukee Bucks have come to the realization that it's time to move Giannis. And again, I say seems like because this is just the latest rumor. For all we know, next week we can get something that says the opposite, right? That says right now is that league sources say that the Bucks were already struggling to generate difference-making trade discussions while making the likes of Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis available. Michael Porter Jr., Zach LaVine, DeAndre Hunter, Jeremy Grant, and Miles Bridges have all been mentioned as potential targets. But the Bucks' lack of available draft capital to sweeten the trade offers has clearly complicated their search to improve the roster around Antetokounmpo. Sources describe Milwaukee's grudging realization over the course of this season that that pathways to providing Giannis with a championship contention he has clear prioritized just aren't there. No shit. Like, I'm glad that you've gotten here. Welcome to the conversation. Welcome to the reality of what it is. But then we also got things as well that now that according to Mark Fischer, that the Bucks are planning on getting this done maybe at the draft, saying this. Said one league source particularly well-versed in Bucks matters, this is shaping up to be a draft day kind of thing. It's happening, meaning a trade in conjunction with the draft, if not now. So that may table conversations for Giannis being moved at this year's trade deadline. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that, very well the team with now hearing this, that the Bucks are more open to moving Giannis could very well come calling sooner rather than later. And that is a reality of this. And maybe that is what happens here. But overall, it just seems like there is a high probability as of now that Giannis if he is moved, it's going to happen at the NBA draft. Going on to say this as well. Waiting until after the NBA lottery, drawing in May, to truly launch into the process of parting ways with the face of their franchise via trade would at least enable the Bucks to know exactly what potential trade partners can offer in terms of the 2026 draft capital. So it seems like the Bucks, which is smart for teams to do, you wait and see exactly where those picks are. And then that can help strategically place and know the value that other teams have and the value of those draft picks rather than trading Giannis at the trade deadline, and then even if you get a 2026 draft pick, if Giannis ends up helping that team win more games, maybe it's not as good of a draft pick. So via this recent updates from Jake Fischer and other places, Windhorst as well, putting all those together, it just seems like the Bucks have finally come to where we were all at, and where I have been saying for a while for this Milwaukee Bucks team is that this is a situation where it's time to move on. It's just time to move on. You don't have the assets. Now, again, I've given the Milwaukee Bucks credit in the sense that even being willing to cut Dame to sign Miles Turner to try to, use that Hail Mary, they have tried to make moves. Trading for Kyle Kuzma, they just haven't worked. But eventually, you run out of runway. You run out of assets. You run out of these things to meaningfully make a trade. And when the pieces that you have don't have value, the Bobby Portises, the Kyle Kuzmas, when they don't have value around the league, you don't have that. So your assets have depreciated. And that is basically where the Milwaukee Bucks find themselves right now. Now, we also have heard this as well saying this. Portland is definitely a team to track here when it comes to eventual Antetokounmpo outcomes. No one is suggesting that a trade to the Trailblazers is a scenario that Giannis would push for but Portland still controls Milwaukee's draft capital in 2028, 2029, and 2030 thanks to the team's Drew Holiday for Dame Lillard swap. And I'm told the Blazers official have always viewed Antetokounmpo's potential Milwaukee exit as a chance to improve their own roster by jumping into a multi-team deal. So the Portland Trailblazers, who have so much of the Milwaukee Bucks pick, we saw something similar with the Chicago Bulls last year. And I don't bring that up because that's my team, but the Bulls last year traded Zach LaVine. They got the San Antonio Spurs involved in that trade, and then they were able to get their own first round pick back, which the Spurs had protected if it did not fall into the top 10. And then they ended up holding on to that pick that I believe ended up falling to 12th or 11th, and then they were able to keep that pick, right? So the Milwaukee Bucks could look to do something similar here, right? It's in the sense that create a 3-team trade, create an opportunity to get assets, and maybe take on a contract that the Portland Trailblazers don't want, and maybe get one of your picks back in the case of that. And that could be a key for Milwaukee, as if they trade Giannis, they're not going to be good. Now, there are going to be other moves that come if they do decide to move Giannis as well. There's no point in keeping Miles Turner at that point either. Ryan Rollins may be one that you look to hold on to, as is AJ Green, but you may even want to look at what value they have around the league also. So if the Bucks have truly come to the place where they are now expected to trade Giannis at the 2026 NBA draft, expect a series of dominoes to fall after that. And then we can see them be sellers at the trade deadline as well, maybe even further into the offseason. So these are all things that could come into fruition for the Milwaukee Bucks, and this is the reality of it. And, sometimes teams just have to come to the harsh reality that your window is closed. And that may be what the Bucks have. If these rumors are to be believed, the Bucks have come to the realization our window is now, with us seriously having a window of contention with Giannis, it's done. It's gone. It's closed. So now all we can do is try to recoup as many assets possible and set ourselves up for the future. We gave it a go. We did win a title while Giannis was here, but now it's time to move on from a player that's been the face of your franchise and really turn the Milwaukee Bucks around. What Giannis was able to do in Milwaukee, a city that's never been a huge free agent destination, all those type of things, to turn it and win a title in Milwaukee, you can't take that away from him at all. But everything has to come to a close, and it seems like this Giannis Antetokounmpo Milwaukee Bucks chapter is finally about to come to a close. And I tell you what, I can't wait, because some part of me is tired of talking about it. So we'll see what that holds as well. Now, let's move on to the next topic, which is the Boston Celtics, who reportedly are aggressively going after a high-level center in this draft. We'll see what ends up happening with that. This one comes from Shams, who says this: they've been in the marketplace trying to get big-time starting center potentially. They're going to be aggressive in moving the needle. They got assets. They got contracts to play with. So the Celtics have been linked to a number of players, right? And we're going to talk about those players and the deals that could be there. And it's built around Anthony Simons' expiring $27.7 million contract, as well as a $22.5 million trade player exception that they have as well, right? Boston also owns their future first-round draft picks also. Their 2032 pick is frozen. But other than that, they have all their own draft picks, right? So the fact is that the Boston Celtics, who look to shed salary, it ended up working. And we'll see what happens there. So I want to look at some deadline deals that are potentially, and via the rumors of players that we heard that they're shopping. One is Zubac with the Clippers, right? Now, in this, the Celtics would have to trade Anthony Simons, probably Sam Hauser as well, and in return of that, for the 2026 first-round pick, they'll get Zubac, Bogdan Bogdanović as well in that. Now, this is a center that, is 28 years old, I believe, if I'm not mistaken there, who is a really good defensive center, and that could bring exactly what they want. You look at Jason Tatum possibly making his return, and even if he doesn't, just the way the Boston Celtics have played this year, you add frontline help like Zubac here at the trade deadline, and I do think the Boston Celtics have become the favorite in the East. No knock to the Detroit Pistons. Great team. I love that roster, and I do think they can surprise some people for sure. But if the Boston Celtics get a player like Zubac, and for that Anthony Simons give up a 26 first-round pick to do so, that puts them right up there. And that's one of the rumored targets that they have. Next up, Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, we don't know for sure if Memphis is even really looking to move on from Zubac. If they are, though, it's a big if here, if they are, Anthony Simons, a 2027 first-round pick, and to get Jaren Jackson Jr. back. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies may very well want more than just one 2027 first-round pick back. We don't know exactly what the Grizzlies are going to look, right? Of course, they've talked about rebuilding around Jaren Jackson Jr., but if I'm the Celtics and I can get JJJ, that makes a lot of sense. Now, he doesn't typically like to play center. It's better at a power forward. He's not a great rebounder either, even though the Celtics are a really good rebounding team. But to add his rim protection and shot blocking would do a whole lot for this team. He's averaging right now, good numbers across the board. He's averaging 18.9 points on 47.9% shooting, 36% shooting from three, 5.7 rebounds, 1.9 assists, and 1.5 blocks per game in 41 games so far this season. So there's no doubt that Jaren Jackson Jr. would fit the mold of a really good center for this Boston Celtics team. I just think he's probably the least realistic that's on this list via what we've heard so far. Number 3, Robert Williams. Now, this is a crazy one because they had Robert Williams, but they wouldn't have to give up a first-round pick in this move. Reportedly, they can get Robert Williams for Sam Haize and Chris Boucher, and then you can add Robert Williams to this team. The question then becomes about, does he stay healthy enough? Is that the question that you have here? And that doesn't stop you from making a bigger move in the offseason, which is something that they can look at too as well, right? But the Time Lord who came from Boston, and underwent that surgery on his knee in 2025, he's playing the most games, this season. And so, that's what you got to see when it comes down to it. Would you give up Sam Haize for that? We'll see, right? But that would be kind of a more, not as big of a needle pusher, but that would still get them the type of center that they want. Maybe not the caliber center, but the type. And then lastly, Day'Ron Sharpe. Now, this is a guy that's on the Brooklyn Nets right now. Reportedly, you can get him for Sam Haize and a 2027 second-round pick. This would mean that you still have the Anthony Simons trade chip to cash in elsewhere. I like Day'Ron Sharpe. I think he's a solid passer. I think he's a really smart defensive player as well. He doesn't take anything away from anybody on this team offensively for the Boston Celtics. And he's a guy that he had high energy, very team-friendly contract with a year remaining on it as well, which makes it a great option. Only averaging 7.8 points, but 60% shooting from the field, 6.2 rebounds, and a steal per game as well. And Day'Ron Sharpe also can shoot a little bit from the perimeter as well. He's only 24 years old, still developing in his 5th year. So it seems like those are the names to look out for the Boston Celtics. Day'Ron Sharpe, Robert Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., which is a long shot, and Zubac. So let me know down below, which one of these centers do you think would fit best with the Boston Celtics? Which one do you think they can realistically get? Let me know that down below. With that, last topic of the day, another player I'm kind of tired of talking about, but Anthony Davis reportedly may not be in line with Rich Paul and what Rich Paul is demanding. This one comes from Shams, this one comes from Tim McMahon of ESPN that says this. There are trade discussions. His agent Rich Paul has made it clear he thinks AD's best interest is to get traded. AD doesn't necessarily agree, though. I've been told that he has not been pushing to be moved and is comfortable here in Dallas. Now, this is the first time that we've heard that Anthony Davis may not actually want to be moved. And, for a player that, has already been moved a couple of times in his career, getting moved to Dallas was something that was unexpected. And maybe we've heard that the Mavs also are basically looking at Rich Paul and saying, we're not going to move him just because you tell us. You're not going to bully us into trading Anthony Davis. We're not going to do that just because you say so. If we do it, it's going to be because it's something that we feel truly benefits us. But now Anthony Davis may even be pushing back on Rich Paul a little bit, which is an interesting wrinkle in this because if your client's the one telling you that he doesn't necessarily just want to be moved, who are you to push otherwise? Rich Paul, and this is the thing that I've said, and this is a little bit of a tangent. I think that Rich Paul has gotten way too much power around the league. I just think that that's just what we've seen here. I think that is the reality of it. And as long as this keeps happening, like, Rich Paul has to be stopped. If you're not listening to your own client, then what the hell are we doing? You think you know better? And I guess that's sometimes an agent's job is to protect the player from themselves as well. But I think that, just the nature of how Rich Paul operates, we're seeing it a little bit with the Lakers as well. I just think that there's something to be made here about maybe Anthony Davis is, and I want to be clear. It's not saying that Anthony Davis necessarily that he's against being traded, right, at all. But it just seems like he's not necessarily the biggest proponent of it, whereas Rich Paul is kind of like, I want him out of here now. That Anthony Davis may be a little bit like, hey, let's pump our brakes a little bit on this and just see what develops here. And I guess we'll see what happens there. But let me know your thoughts on everything down below. As always, if Giannis moves, the NBA shifts overnight, as we've said multiple times. If he doesn't, this offseason could get absolutely crazy around draft time after the draft lottery with teams positioning themselves to potentially get Giannis Antetokounmpo. But either way, it's not going to slow down. It seems like it's picking up. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications as well so you never miss an episode. Drop your thoughts down below. Is Giannis a buck next season? Is he a buck at the start at tip-off next season? Let me know what you guys think on that. Which center do the Boston Celtics actually end up getting? Let me know what you guys think on all that. You guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message, and our voicemail for the mailbag. The number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related, and I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Prior tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.